Director, and it is my pleasure to welcome you to this morning's webinar, A Beginner's Guide to RDA. This is the second in a series of 4 that is going to bring us to a common place of knowledge so that Dr. Snow can join us in March and do a full day face-to-face training on RDA. Today we have a wonderful learning opportunity for you with Dr. Snow, who is an assistant professor in the Graduate School of Library and Information Science at Dominican University in River Forest, Illinois. She received her PhD in Information Science in 2011 from the University of North Texas, where she taught cataloging courses primarily online from 2006 until 2011 for the Department of Library and Information Sciences. She previously worked as a cataloger in the Rare Book Room, University Archives, and the Technical Services Departments at the University of North Texas. She currently teaches beginning and advanced cataloging courses at Dominican University, both face-to-face and online. Please welcome Dr. Snow and enjoy her webinar this morning.
All right.
Dr. Snow.
Thank you, Lily, very much. Welcome, everyone. And thank you for joining me today on RDA. And I hope you guys enjoyed the Ferber webinar last time we met, if you did attend that webinar. Today I'm going to proceed as if you all at least now have a basic understanding of Ferber so that we can now build on that and learn a bit more about RDA. So let's get going. And as always, if you do have any questions while I'm talking, I'm very fine with you guys asking them in the chat box as we go along, but I'm hoping there also will be a little bit of time at the end that we can talk a bit about RDA as well. So in this session today, I'm just going to give a very brief history and background of RDA, which you may or may not know. So that's why I just want to kind of go and do that very, very briefly, and then talk about some of the major differences between AACR2 and RDA, how RDA is organized, and then talk about, and I'm trying to devote most of this webinar to these specific changes in new fields that you'll encounter in RDA bibliographic records that I'm assuming that most of you guys have already seen some of if you're doing, cataloging currently, some of these changes as well, but you may just want to have a better understanding of what you're seeing. But as you guys know, this is just an hour. I can't cover the entirety of RDA and the changes within an hour. So that's why I'm hoping that whatever I'm not able to cover here today, I will be able to talk about in the face-to-face workshop in March that hopefully you guys will attend, where I can go and kind of in some more depth and more practice with what I'm talking about here today, as well as some of the other things that I feel are important that just not able to talk about here today. So keep that in mind. I don't want to promise too much, but I just want to give you guys a taste of this and then talk more about it in March. So don't fret. But if there is something that you were really hoping to learn more about that I didn't cover today, there will be a survey that I hope that you guys will take after this webinar to let me know what you want to learn more about, or something that if I didn't cover, if you want to learn more about that, just let me know, and I can kind of better prepare the workshop if I know specifically things that you guys want to learn more about. So, okay, that said, once again, just kind of brief overview and background here. We talked last time briefly how, RDA, resource description and access, are our new cataloging rules. The ACR2, they've been with us a long time. It's been a good friend for a long time. Is no longer, I mean, it's still a standard, obviously, but it's no longer being updated and maintained by the Joint Steering Committee. So for all intents and purposes, it is now the former standard. RDA is kind of the new standard that we all need to try to get on board with, if you will, but it's just going to take a while. The transition is going to take a while. Like I talked about last time, RDA uses the entity relationship model, Ferber, which we talked about in the last webinar, as the underlying conceptual model. And the RDA toolkit is what contains the RDA rules and is organized according to Ferber principles and terminology. So like, the AACR2, we had, the binder for AACR2 and access through the RDA toolkit. The RDA rules are accessed through this RDA toolkit that was really designed to be online, but they also have a print version. But I'd highly recommend, if you are going to use RDA, the RDA toolkit online would probably be your best bet, because they will update that more frequently than they do the print version. So there you go. So and then here is just kind of a screenshot of a corner of it. I didn't get the whole thing, but here it's at access.rdatoolkit.org. Probably many of you may already have access to this. It is, a subscription service, just like AACR2. So yes, you have to get a subscription to it to access it, and then the table of contents down the left-hand side. And I find, navigating it is actually not radically different from navigating AACR2 in Catalogger's desktop. It's just, once again, kind of getting used to the different terminology that you're seeing in RDA Toolkit. That's, Ferber terminology that's different from AACR2. It also has these nice, tools and resources tabs here as well that includes a mapping of MARC fields to RDA rules and vice versa. I found that was so incredibly helpful when I was first learning RDA. Is if I didn't really know, I knew the MARC field and the subfield, but I didn't know what RDA rule was associated with that. All I needed to do was just go to that resources tab and then do that the conversion there, and it took me to the rule that I needed. So that was very helpful. So those of you who just are still very intimidated by just looking at the rules like that, I find kind of having going that direction, going from MARC to RDA, was often very helpful in my understanding of the RDA rules. So that said, first of all, just basically RDA. Okay, so who created it, developed it, and so forth? It's the same people that developed and maintained AACR2 for all these years. The Joint Steering Committee for the Development of RDA, that actually, they just changed their name to that. Development of RDA. It was previously, and I'm blanking now, it was not the development of AACR2, but it was something like that. But the Joint Steering Committee, which is composed of these constituent organizations. So it is like an international, thing. The creation of this was sponsored by all these different associations: the American Library Association, the Australian Committee on Cataloging, the British Library, the Canadian Committee on Cataloging, CLIP, the Chartered Institute of Library and Information Professionals, which is the British equivalent of the American Library Association, in case you didn't know, the Deutsche Nationalbibliothek, and the Library of Congress. So many people from around the world did contribute to the development of RDA in order for it to be a truly international standard. And the current chair, at least actually until the end of this month, I believe, is Barbara Tillett, who's been, with this development from the get-go. I don't remember who exactly is going to take her place, but she is retiring soon, so she will soon not be the current chair of the JSC. But anyway, so just FYI. And why not AACR3? And maybe asking, okay, why do we need to change the name of this? Why, what's the point? Why not just make an Anglo-American Cataloging Rules 3? And, the JSC actually originally started out along that line of thinking, just kind of creating a third edition of the Anglo-American Cataloging Rules. But they decided that it would be a better idea to approach this in a different way. They wanted to have, a standard in name and in rules that is more internationally inclusive. So, Anglo-American Cataloging Rules doesn't sound as inclusive as something a bit more general, resource description and access. So they just in the name itself, they thought it would be best to change that so it's very clear that it's more internationally inclusive. They also wanted a content standard that's designed for the digital world. So in theory, RDA is supposed to better accommodate digital resources than AACR2, which was really, when you think about it, was designed, developed in the late 70s, before digital resources were really a big deal like they are now, and collected by many libraries. Not that AACR2 didn't evolve and have create revisions and whatnot to accommodate digital resources, electronic resources, but RDA was kind of developed with these in mind, knowing that these will be more prominent in libraries, museums, and archives. So they try to keep that in mind. And it's also the JSC was hoping that metadata produced using RDA rules would be more quote unquote of the web, so more machine actionable, part of the linked data environment, which we're going to talk about in the next webinar. Really try to have the elements and attributes um, defined very clearly within the rules so that it'll work well within the web environment. Work, like I said, of the web, and have our metadata, on the web and not in these little silos in libraries, which, for some people think is a little bit scary, because we want to have more control of our metadata and not just kind of have it out there. But that's where a lot of our users are, right? They're on the internet, they're on the web. They want to be able to access our metadata from the web, and it's hard now to do that because of our cataloging standards. So RDA is supposed to help. It's not going to go all the way. It's not going to bring us completely to this vision of a linked data environment, but it's one step in that direction. Okay, and I'll talk about that further in our next webinar. And they wanted a different approach to describing and relating information entities through this new conceptual model, Ferber, once again, which kind of helps with that defining and specifically identifying the elements and attributes that are part of our bibliographic data. So, yes, they decided to incorporate that conceptual model into the rules. So they began work on the new cataloging standard. At this point, it's not RDA yet. They just they began work. I mean, really, they began work, quite frankly, like in the 1990s, but they began work in earnest, I guess you could say, in 2004, and then decided as AACR3. Okay, so they started off developing a third edition of AACR, and decided in 2005 to change the name to Resource Description and Access, RDA. They worked on a draft for RDA, which was released in 2008, and there was a lot. They invited comments, concerns, questions to the draft for a while. That I believe it was at the beginning of 2009 when those were due, but there was a lot of time for anyone to make. It was whoa intense. Anyway, oh okay, because everyone, it looks like someone, if we lost sound. I just want to make sure everyone can still hear me. Hold on. I don't want to continue until I can know for certain everyone can still hear me. Okay. 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 So I'm not quite sure what's going on, but if you can hear me, just let me know. I just want to make sure everyone can hear me okay before I continue. Can you hear me? Hear me? I didn't. You didn't lose too much of that. Um, there's a lot of typing. So okay. Well, let me know. I'm gonna monitor and make. Okay. Oh, again. Uh, Luli, are you able to hear me okay? Or is this, um, yikes. Okay, let's see. I'm just trying to,
Mute my speaker.
I'm just not quite sure what happened because I didn't touch anything. I guess it's possible that it might be my internet kind of being weird, but I haven't touched anything, so I'm not quite sure why it's cutting in and out. Yeah, maybe Adobe Connect because I don't think that I've done anything different here. Um, yeah, yikes. Hope Adobe Connect is not on the fritz. Um, yeah, I can't hear you, Lily. So, okay. Should I?
Can you hear me now?
I can hear you now. Okay, I can hear you now.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. Um, should I continue? I'm not quite
I
sure.
would go ahead and continue. It seems
Okay.
as if everyone is able to hear again. Please raise your hands or
Yeah.
give us a green check mark. I apologize for the technical difficulties. We are experiencing them. We have hands and green check marks, Dr. Snow. Please,
Okay.
please,
Okay.
yes, it looks like we're back,
Okay.
and I believe it's an Adobe Connect issue because it was widespread.
Okay. All right. All right. Sorry, guys. Sorry, guys, about that. Hopefully, this won't occur again. But just let me know if at any point it cuts out. Just let me know because I don't want to just keep yakking on if you guys can't hear me. Anyway, anyway, the first edition of RDA was released in 2010. There was a study that the U.S. national libraries, namely the Library of Congress, National Agricultural Library, and the National Library of Medicine, conducted from 2010 until 2011, along with some partners, they called them. Just really catalogers from all walks of life, from public academic school libraries, vendors, library schools. In fact, Dominican was one of the partners before I came here. They were one of the partners to help, study RDA to see, how it worked, how well it worked in their cataloging environment. And it was this study that the Library of Congress was going to use to determine if they were going to adopt RDA. Okay, so because of this study, they felt that RDA was good to go for prime time. So in March 31st of 2013, so just earlier this year, they decided to implement RDA for really all of their cataloging. Maybe there's I think there's still some parts of Library of Congress that are not, but they are, for all intents and purposes, they have adopted RDA throughout the Library of Congress, and many libraries that were part of the study. In fact, like University of Chicago was part of this study. They started using RDA and they just decided not to stop. They just, started using RDA as part of the study and then just kind of decided not to go back to AACR2. So there's actually several of these partners that did that. So anyway, so that's the timeline. What will the RDA environment look like? Well, it looks like what you see right now. At the moment, it doesn't look too different from the AACR2 environment, primarily because most integrated library systems, like we talked about last time, are not Ferberized. Okay, so there are some integrated library systems that are kind of testing this out. Um, but because of that, because these library systems are pretty much the same library systems we've been using, the RDA doesn't look radically different from AACR2, and so therefore it integrates well, at least at the moment, with AACR2 legacy data. So what you're really seeing now, so it's just this basically the same bibliographic records, just kind of maybe some new fields, some things spelled out, but otherwise pretty much the same stuff that we're used to dealing with. It may be different once the systems are updated to be Ferberized, maybe in a few years, because as we all know, things kind of tend to move pretty slowly in the cataloging world for good reason. So it may take a while to get there, but I think that we'll get there. And RDA, quite frankly, is very similar to AACR2 when it comes down to it. It may not look that way on the surface, but when you actually read the rules in RDA, like you compare like the RDA rule that's kind of the equivalent of the RDA rule in essence. Sometimes they're almost exactly the same, like literally word for word exactly the same. It's really not that bad once you get into it. And it also discusses descriptions and access points, just like AACR2 does. Even though RDA does not say that you have to use a specific encoding standard. You can still use MARC with it, but you can really use any encoding standard that you want. MARC, mods, whatever. And you can still use ISBD punctuation and order if you want. That's talking about in an appendix, but you don't have to. So that's why with the records that you see are very similar to what you're used to seeing for RDA. And then just, for now, one bibliographic record representing each item that you have in hand. And here's just, very quickly a side-by-side comparison of an AACR2 and RDA record for the same item. The Foundations of Library and Information Science by Richard Rubin. And same information here, just maybe presented slightly different. The abbreviations written now to like third edition, for example, and pages. And the 264 fields obviously different. I'll explain more about that in a minute. So otherwise it's really just kind of the 264 and then those new fields 336, 337, 338 that are there that are not in AACR2. I'm going to talk more about those in just a minute as well. But just to kind of show you that ultimately, as long as you kind of understand these new fields, what they are, and the purpose of them, then it's not that bad, I promise. So the differences between RDA and AACR2, like I mentioned last time, the organization of rules are slightly different. As we know, AACR2 is organized primarily by format. So if you are cataloging a book, you go to the chapter on cataloging books. If you're cataloging a sound recording, you go to that chapter on sound recordings, with this, the first chapter being kind of the general rules that encompass everything. The RDA is not organized this way, as we discussed last time. It's organized by elements and values, organized by Ferber terminology, by WIMI. Okay, so the work, expression, manifestation, and item, and so section 1 here, recording attributes of the manifestation and item, and so forth. So it's essentially saying that, look, if you have to transcribe a title, for example, and you want to transcribe the title for the specific manifestation that you have in hand, then you go to, that's chapter 2 within section 1 for describing that. Yes, it's really kind of, you want to start with the element that you're trying to describe and then go from there, as opposed to identifying what you have in hand and doing that. In essence, in a kind of a simplified way, that's what you do. So it's just kind of a different approach to the rules. And also, there's more cataloger's judgment in RDA, and I know that there's been just a lot of to-do about this. This has kind of been something that has been, I think for some catalogers, a problem to deal with and very frustrating and stressful, is because there are more options in order for catalogers to customize their metadata for their library. So, like for example, the RDA, the main rule for recording the place of publication for a manifestation is Rule 282. It is a core element, meaning that you need to transcribe it. It needs to be in your record if you have that. And it says if more than one place of publication appears on the source of information, only the first recorded is required. So it's in essence kind of saying, look, you only really need to record one place of publication if there's multiple listed on the item. However, it does say in this, further rule 2824, if there's more than one place of publication, just record all of them in the order that they appear on the item. So, yeah, and indicated by the sequence, layout, and topography of the names on the source of information, period. There's no little exceptions to that that's provided. Like in AACR2, it says if there's multiple place of publications and the first one's not the place where, the country where you're cataloging the work of, the cataloging agency, then you need to put, the first one and then, the place where you are. There's no such rule in RDA. It's either just record the first one or record all of them. Hold on. I'll come back to that in just a minute. Even though I did see something on AutoCAD where there's been kind of some about that, where it's actually, it seems to be more kind of a grab bag type of rule where you can actually take, just kind of pick out whichever ones you want to transcribe. So this is, oi, oi, oi. So just once again, that's just a good example of how RDA is very, very flexible in terms of how it allows you to transcribe data, which can be very stressful if you don't have local policies or procedures in place to say, look, at this level, the local level, we are going to transcribe it this way. Okay, so because you can make these decisions at the local level that even though the rules are kind of flexible in this way, you can decide at the local level how you want to do it. Also, RDA is big on taking what you see, transcribing what you see. So if there are any inaccuracies on the item, you do not correct the inaccuracies within the value, the data value in the element. And also you don't abbreviate unless it is on the item, for example. So taking this as an example, we have living history, which should be living history. In AACR2, we would just one way we could do this is transcribing the 245 field as living history. So you'd actually would include the mistake here in the 245A, but then you'd put like IE history, right, or sick, right, or SIC in square brackets and so forth within the value, the data value in 245A. We would abbreviate that first rootlage edition as 1ST, rootlage ED, and so forth. But we do correct the title here in the 246 field, so that way we can search either way, and the user will be able to find it using either form of this title. Under RDA, it's we still transcribe the incorrect title in the 245A and correct it in the 246 field, but we do not do anything further in the 245A in terms of correcting it, like saying SIC or IE, whatever. We just put whatever it is and then correct it in the 246, and then we can have like maybe a note field stating that it's an incorrect a misspelled title, or that this we can also have a 246 subfield I showing title should read blah blah blah, but you are not supposed to put any sort of corrections or anything in the 245A. Okay, that's because we want to have kind of clean data, if you will. So we want to just kind of transcribe it how it appears. This facilitates automatic data capture if you want to do that. But it's cleaner to do it this way as opposed to having our values have all this additional stuff there. Because if you think about it, the title of this work, let me go back a second, is not living history, square brackets, i.e. history. That's not the title of this work. The title of it, even though it's incorrect, is living history, or misspelled rather, living history. That is the title, for good or for bad. But it should actually be living history. So we have that represented in the 246. So, and then the 250 field we spell out first because that's how it appears on the item. And I'm still using sentence case here, just even though RDA, it's you don't have to have a sentence case there, but you can if you want to. It's going to be really up to the cataloger in that case. How RDA is organized, 10 sections, 12 appendices, glossary and index. Section 1 through 4 focuses on recording attributes of elements. Section 5 through 10, recording the relationships between and among attributes of elements. So like we were talking about under Ferber, it's an entity relationship model. So there's many rules and chapters associated with describing the elements and the attributes of elements and the relationships, right? Because that's a big part of this. We want to make sure that the relationships between the elements and the attributes are clear. So section 1 focuses on manifestations and items. 2, works and expressions. 3, persons, families, and corporate bodies. So these first 2 sections are those group 1 entities in Ferber. The next, persons, families, and corporate bodies, is the group 2 entities in Ferber for concepts, concepts, objects, events, and places are kind of the subject matter. And this is not complete. This section is not complete. So same with here. So the rest of the sections, like I said, try to specify and define these relationships between works, expressions, manifestations, and items, and all the other entities. So looks like the sound keeps going in and out. I'm trying to futz with this a little bit myself to see if maybe it's my microphone somehow, but I'm not quite sure what's going on there. Um, anyway, so anyway, that's how it's organized. Some changes in terminology as well. Just briefly, I mean, there's other changes in terminology, but here are kind of the biggies, if you will. So chief source of information under AACR2 is now preferred source of information. It's still the same concept, just kind of a different way of saying it. An authorized heading is now a preferred name, so we do still have kind of authorized, names and so forth. An RDA, but it's now called a preferred name that you put in an authorized access point. C references are variant names. There's no longer a main and added entry concepts in RDA. It's just, if you have an entry, if you have a preferred name, you put it in an authorized access point. There's no main or added about it. It's just there are authorized access points, and then there's just access points. That you may not have a preferred form of a name in there. And I'm not going to go too much into the main and added entry issue this time around, but I was just thinking last night that it is kind of a big issue, but it's more of a MARC issue, quite frankly. So what I'm going to do is during my MARC webinar, the one on MARC and BibFrame and how they relate to RDA, I think that one's in February, I believe. I'm going to talk more about that then, and the kind of the issues associated with having the concepts of main and added entry that kind of still embedded in the MARC encoding, if you will, that are not in RDA. So there's that, and then the general material designation, so what would be in that 245H field, that is no longer around in RDA. That doesn't exist. It is now kind of an obsolete subfield in RDA records. So if I know that there are going to be some catalogers who kind of are kind of attached to the GMD, that what's in the square brackets, sound recording in square brackets. And I know that there's many librarians, like reference librarians who are also attached to that GMD as well. And that's fine, but if you do have that in your RDA record, it's not really technically an RDA record. It is a hybrid of a sort, because you're not supposed to have that in an RDA record. You're supposed to only have these content, media, and carrier types, which I'll discuss later. So today, even though time has escaped us, I was kind of getting to the nuts and bolts here of the specific differences between RDA and AACR2. I'm going to talk about these 5 things specifically. Like I said, there's many more things I could talk about in terms of the differences between AACR2 and RDA, but these I felt were kind of the main ones that are the most obvious changes when you just kind of look at an RDA record, and then we can talk further about additional changes and maybe go into more detail about some of these things in March. So starting off with the DESC, the descriptive cataloging form fixed field. So in the past, as you guys know, if doing copy cataloging or original cataloging, that you would code this as A, because you used AACR2 as the standard for creating the record. Now we don't use that, but as you can see here from my screenshot, this is from the OCLC Bibliographic Formats and Standards website, that there is no code for RDA, is there? Interesting. Well, and there's not going to be, at least for the time being, as far as I know. They're not going to introduce one. So for our purposes, we need to figure out a way to code this, because it is mandatory. It is a required fixed field without coding it AACR2, right? So now catalogers, if you're using RDA, you can actually, as I mentioned before, use RDA with ISD punctuation or not. So here, like C, for example, code C, ISBD punctuation omitted. Is saying that you're using rules, a standard, but you're not including punctuation conventions of ISBD, the International Standard Bibliographic Description. And I is for ISBD. You're creating a record. The record is created using some standard that includes ISBD punctuation. So that's what we're using currently for RDA records. we code DESC is I, little lowercase I, to show that we're using ISBD punctuation, because that is, from what I can tell, really most catalogers are still utilizing ISBD in their MARC records, but then adding, the subfield E in the 040 field to identify this record as being specifically RDA. Just so that's the way to know this. So, and then you have the different institutional codes here for OCLC in the 040 field. The title proper, the rule associated with transcribing the title proper, transcribe a title as it appears on the source of information. So rule 2314. So kind of like our rule that we had in AACR2 regarding the recording the title proper, but minus kind of the saying that transcribe it how it appears, except for capitalization and punctuation and so forth. So so it's a bit more stripped down here. It's just transcribe it how it appears, and that's it. So technically, according to this rule, we can transcribe this like this. Okay, this title page, The Organization of Information, which is in all capital letters by Arlene G. Taylor and Daniel N. Jodre. We can transcribe it as all capital letters, and that's perfectly fine according to RDA. Okay, so if you see a record this way, from whatever, however you get your records, this is not incorrect. And if it's already a record, this is not incorrect. It may be annoying to you. I mean, it bothers me because it feels like you're shouting, right? But according to the rules, this is perfectly acceptable. Now, that doesn't mean that catalogers will change this. And like I said, we are allowed to change these things according to Appendix A. It does say that we can use, I believe it says you can use like the Chicago Manual of Style, which does allow the sentence case rather than title case, right? Because traditionally we've always used sentence case rather than title case. So kind of writing it out like a sentence as opposed to capitalizing every word in the title. And this kind of goes for most of the title and then any proper nouns. So this is allowed as an option, continuing to use sentence case according to our punctuation as well. It's not required, but it will likely continue to be used as long as we are using the MARC encoding standard. So, having like the semicolons between our data elements. So, abbreviations. Okay, this has been, it seems like kind of a whoops. Okay, I lost sound again. Yikes. Oh, I hate this. I hate that it keeps cutting out. I'm really sorry, guys. Yikes. I'm just trying to, double check my connections. I just think it's very odd that connect. Oh wait, hold on. Let me go back to the. Okay, so Kent is asking the initial article is included. Yes, right. And I didn't include any MARC coding in this particular example, but yeah, we would include the organization of information here, and put it all capital letters according to the pure RDA rule. And then if we're using MARC, we can then use the 245, the second indicator, to skip that non-filing character, the initial article the. So we'd have, in this case, the 245-1-4, right? So it's the for skipping the, if that makes sense, Kent. So I hope that helps. But yeah, we just kind of transcribe it how it appears. So. Okay, so the abbreviations, that's been, like I said, kind of a, I don't know, it's not really controversy, but it's just kind of made a big deal when in fact it's not really that big a deal, I guess, in my mind. I'm just kind of spelling things out. Because quite frankly, I think in some of these cases, it's more user-friendly when you think about it. Okay, so P period, okay, yeah, a user can likely figure out that means page or pages. But the use of like SL, like sine loco, and SN for sine nomine, I think a lot of even like librarians don't even know what that means. So So in a sense, kind of having it written out makes it more user-friendly in a sense. So illustrations, as opposed to putting ILL, we use illustrations. P period, so page or pages, V period, volume or volumes, and then SL for sine loco for without location. We have to write out place of publication not identified, and SN for sine nomine without name is publisher not identified. So and then put that in square brackets to show that it's you're supplying that information. So yes, and so but if there are abbreviations on the item itself, which there may be, then you just transcribe them how they appear. You don't actually have to write them out. So and I'll go through an example here just a second. So let's say, for example, you have this work. You're looking at the title page of 100 Ideas for Children's Crafts, written and illustrated by good old Melville Cutter, kind of my inside joke of a Melville Dewey Charles Cutter blended hybrid type person making a work on children's crafts, which is I find funny anyway, but I'm weird. So here we have that's published by this Abacus in Bloomington, Indiana, the second Happy Fun Time edition from June 1999. So in this particular case, we under AACR2. Oh no, sorry, this is under RDA. Sorry, I'm on RDA now. On completely RDA. Should have made that clear. And RDA, once again we transcribe like the second Happy Fun Time edition, how it appears, but using sentence case. I mean, because under RDA we can have this all capitalized, but I'm writing this sentence case now. And Happy Fun Time, I've determined is not a proper noun, so or the name of any like a company, for example. So I just kind of transcribe that sentence case, how it appears, and then I use the 264 field, which I'll talk more about in just a minute, for the publication information, transcribing it how it appears on the item. So it actually is written out Bloomington, comma, space, Indiana. So I don't have to remember the abbreviation for Indiana anymore. Yay! And so in a sense, it's actually a good thing, right? So that we don't have to remember all these many abbreviations for states and everything. So it's actually, quite frankly, been more easy to teach it this way, so that the students don't have to worry so much about abbreviations and things. They just transcribe it how it appears. And so forth. So yeah, this is how we transcribe this information on the RDA. But let's just say, for the sake of example, that the place of publication is unknown. So we just know that the publisher's name is Abacus. We don't know where it's published, and we've done some research. We can't figure it out, so we don't know where it's published. And in here, I just changed the second to ND to second written out. Now this is how this should appear. So in the 250 field, the edition statement, we just have the second Happy Fun Time edition written out exactly how it appears on the item, but sentence case. And we use place of publication not identified in square brackets in our 264A to show that it's as opposed to the SL that we're used to transcribing. And there you go. That's how it should appear. So make sure there's no questions about that there. I think I'm, yeah. Okay, so here's just some further examples of how, under AACR2, we just kind of went abbreviation crazy and had, our SL and our 260 field for publication information. Like if we had a publishing company called Random Publishing Company, for example, that's written on the item, we would then abbreviate that, or at least put random as opposed to writing out Random Publishing Company as well. It's under ACR2 we kind of exclude what they call random not important information. As long as we can identify it just by saying random, then it's fine. And then our subfield C, we would put, if we had both a publication date and a copyright date, we'd represent that, right, by putting the publication date first, comma, space, little c, 1989, right? And then the 300 field, we have all our little P and call ill and all that good stuff. So in RDA, we use, that different field, the 264 second indicator of 1, put the place of publication unidentified. We can actually write out the entire publication name. We don't have to worry about figuring out how to shorten that. We can just transcribe it how it appears. And then we put the publication date in the 264.1c and the copyright date actually in a separate field. That's what I'm going to talk about next, and then kind of point out here that 300 field with the pages written out and color illustrations written out. Now note that the cm in that 300C is still cm for centimeters. And that's not a mistake on my part. Under RDA, cm for centimeters is treated like a symbol. It is not an abbreviation, it is a symbol. So you do not need to write out centimeters, okay? You do not need to write out centimeters. You can just leave that as cm. Okay, so I want to get to the 264 field. That's a very important change from AACR2 to RDA, and quite frankly, I mean, it's not. I mean, there's still the same basic information in RDA and AACR2 as it is in RDA. It's just now we have a new mark field to really separate out these elements like we have not really been able to do in the past. The 264 field is the production, publication, distribution, manufacture, and copyright notice field. And for the most part, you're going to just, the first indicator is going to be blank. But the second indicator is what indicates the function of the entity. So if you have a 264 second indicator of 0, that's just purely for production information. The second indicator of 1 just for publication information, 2 for distribution, 3 for manufacture, and 4 for copyright notice, date only. So it's just for copyright dates. But you may not need to use all these multiple fields with the second indicator for every single item. It just really depends on what you have. For most books, you're really just going to have that 264 second indicator of 1 for publication information, and then a 264.4 for copyright date information if you have that. So you don't really need to have the other ones as well. But for RDA records, you have to use this 264 field. Do not use 260 fields in RDA records. The 260 is just for AACR2. Okay. Because under RDA, it's very important to have these different data elements separated out. So kind of going back to our previous example under abbreviations, I showed you how we have a 264 second indicator of 1 for just the publication information, just publication. So you would not put any further information about distribution, manufacturer, copyright, or anything like that in this field like we would in the 260 field. We have the information separated out into 264 fields to make it clear, very clear, and more machine readable, quite frankly, to have it this way. It's harder for our machines to parse this data if they're all just kind of in strings like this in one field. It's easier for machine actionability to have these into separate fields. So we have the 264.4, and note the subfield C at the very beginning, then we put a space, and then if the copyright symbol, if you can make that 1989, or you can actually write out the word copyright as well. Whoops, I thought that I think I have a further example of the dates here in just a second, but let me kind of go back a step. For the places of publication, I'm going to kind of work through the 264 field, at least for the subfield A and then the subfield C. For multiple places of publication, like I mentioned before, if there's more than one place of publication, then you only need to record the first one. That's core. If there's one, but you are allowed to record multiple places of publication if they are there present on the item. So according to these two rules. So let's take an example. The Long Tea Time of the Soul by Douglas Adams, our publishers Simon & Schuster, and the places of publication are New York, London, Toronto, Sydney, and Tokyo. So under AACR2, we would just record New York and Simon & Schuster, right? That's all we need to, unless maybe like the London and New York were switched and we're cataloging in the United States, we would put both London and New York because we want to include a place that's in the country of cataloging. So for RDA, we actually have two options here. We can either just put New York the first place listed, and that's fine. I didn't include this entire thing because I didn't give you the publication date. But Here we have the 264.1 is the second indicator for the publication information. Subfield A, New York. Subfield B, Simon & Schuster. I included the ISBD punctuation here. So very similar to what we're used to dealing with here, almost exactly the same as AACR2, but using the 264 as opposed to the 260. Or we can have all of them, all of the places of publication listed if we want, according to that, which one is it, the 2824 rule. So we can do it either way. Like I said, it's you want to maybe have some local procedures written down in your cataloging department to make it clear to all the catalogers that look, this is, you know, if we are producing original cataloging, this is how we're going to do it. Okay, this is, you know, we're going to do one or the other. And you know, I think that Library of Congress is going to just transcribe all of them, though I find that, you know, depending on the item that you're cataloging, that can get kind of insane, right? Because there's some, you know, publishing companies that just want to list out, you know, the hundreds of different places that they have, you know, their organization there. So it can get quite a long list, and for what benefit, really, if you think about it. So I at least just teach my students just to transcribe the first one. You know, just transcribe the first one and leave it at that. But you know, you may feel differently. Your institution may feel differently, and you may choose this other way. And yeah, Dharma, you know, we could so pick and choose places. So if you had that, then yes, you could, at least according to what's coming out of the JSC, the discussions there, is that there apparently is this rule is going to be adapted and maybe rewritten to say that, look, if you do have a really long list of places and you just want to kind of pick and choose which one to include, that you can do that. But it just, you know, just the way that the rule's written right now, it seems like it's just kind of one or the other. Like you just either put the first one or just put all of them. But I believe that, and I think I just literally saw this yesterday on AutoCAD. Then there's some intel coming out of the JSC discussions that they will allow you to do that. So yes, it's going to be kind of a wild west of different ways of approaching this, which once again kind of drive you crazy, or just be kind of liberating in a sense, right? Just kind of like, woo, you know, do whatever, as long as you get kind of the basic information in there. So yeah. As long as it's you know, make it clear, you know, what manifestation you have in hand. I guess that's the important thing, right? So and then here's kind of further information on you know, if you have a date of publication and a copyright date. So here, let's just say, you know, we have a publication date of 2001, so published by Penguin Books in 2001 with a copyright date of 2000. We can either do, you know, have you know, just the copyright symbol there in the 264.4 C, or we can write out copyright. This is, you know, it's the same. And I think what's happening though, you can the copyright. Sorry, let me back up. Just like under AACR2, the copyright date is optional under RDA. Okay, so you do not have to record the copyright date. So I should have made that clear at the very beginning. That is not a required element. It's just the publication information. If it's there, then that is required. So you need to have a publication date. You do not necessarily need to have a copyright date. So you can, if the publication date and the copyright date are the same, it's fine just to exclude the copyright dates. And that's exactly what the Library of Congress is going to continue to do. If it's the same, then they will just not record the copyright date. But because I feel like the copyright date is you know, it's a separate and different element than the publication date, I have all my students just record the copyright date anyway if it's on the item. So that is once again going to be something that you guys need to decide at the local level what you're going to do. If you're going to follow the what is it called now? The PCC Library of Congress policy statement. So the PCC LC PS, the PS as opposed to the Library of Congress rule interpretations, right? The LCRI it's the policy statements, which is kind of a mouthful. So according to their policy statements, they're going to exclude that. So if you want to just follow the policy statements verbatim, go for it. That's fine. But you don't have to. Once again, RDA does allow you to be flexible in this matter if that's what you want to do. If you feel that your users would benefit from always having the copyright information in there. But at the same time, if you get records from Library of Congress and they don't have that and you don't want to take the time to insert it, then that's also your prerogative as well, right? So, but what if you have a situation where you just have a copyright date? If you just have, like, for example, a copyright date of 2012, and because the date of publication is core, you have to have it. What do you do? So here's an example of that, and we just do this. At least this is what Library of Congress is doing. Even though you do have the option under RDA to put, date of publication not identified in square brackets in 264C, if you have a general idea of when it was published, which in this case, okay, if it was copyrighted in 2012, there's a good chance, and it was just published, it just came across your desk, there's a good chance it was published around that time period as well. So, in my opinion, and I think, in the Library of Congress's opinion, it's better to have something there as opposed to just kind of saying, well, I don't know, it could have been published anytime, right? Which we know that's not the case, right? We know that it was not published in, 1875, right? So might as well be as specific as you can. So what Library of Congress is doing is that they are taking the copyright date and inferring the 2012, just putting that in square brackets. You can also just put a question mark there as well, like you do under AACR2, to show that it is a probable publication date since it's not actually on the item, right? But then once again, I'm kind of tell my students to include the copyright date anyway, but at least it's my understanding that the Library of Congress is just, once again, kind of taking the copyright information, putting it in the publication area, and then just kind of not having the 264 for copyright field. So, which once again, that's their prerogative. If that's what they want to do, that's fine. But I just feel it's since it's on the item, might as well record it. But once again, that's probably up to you guys. So, but yeah, there you go. Like I said, the date of publication not identified is valid according to RDA. It's just kind of generally discouraged in practice. So, if you have some date there, like a printing or a copyright date. So, any questions about that? I'm gonna, because we're just realizing we're rapidly running out of time here. And then I think this may be my last, the content, media, and carrier types. So if you can just bear with me, we'll just kind of breeze through these pretty quickly. The content, media, and carrier types they're once again, they're new MARC fields, 336, 337, 338, that are meant to replace the GMD and 245H. They are specific terms describing the content and carrier of the item, so it's supposed to help, in essence, kind of be more specific and more machine actionable. So they're in theory supposed to be easier to index and search and browse by the system. So better than the GMD, which can kind of be a bit general and kind of describe both content and carrier mixture in there. So the terms that you use, this is a controlled vocabulary. Okay, so you actually have to use the terms supplied in the RDA toolkit or an equivalent website, which I'll show you in just a second. And the terms that you use are provided at rules 6.9, 3.2, and 3.3, which are the content, media, and carrier type rules, respectively. You can also look up the terms, and also there are codes associated with these terms as well on these websites, on the Library of Congress websites. If you do not have access to the RDA toolkit, you can at least look up what they are for free on these websites, the content, media, and carrier types. The content and carrier types are required. The media type is optional. Content type is the content of the item, so not the container. So it's, for example, performed music, still image, three-dimensional form, kind of basically what it is, what the content is, and you add this subfield 2 RDA content, all smushed together, lowercase, at the end of each field to show that it is from RDA. So for a book, for example, we have 336, no indicators. We use the term text as the content type for most books, and then subfield 2, RDA content. So this is actually a little different than what we did under AACR2, right? We wouldn't put a GMD for books normally, right? We'd usually leave that blank. But for books, you need to include this. You need to include the text. We need to include a content, at least the content and the carrier types for all materials that you catalog. The media type is a broad term describing the attributes of a carrier to distinguish manifestations. For example, audio, computer, which some people are just kind of going nuts about computer, being kind of an antiquated way of kind of thinking about it. Video, and then we add our subfield 2 RDA media to the end of the field to show that it's from RDA. And for books, we use the term unmediated, which seems rather unuser friendly in my opinion, but it's unmediated, and that's essentially in theory what it is, right? We don't need anything other than our eyeballs and light, right, to read a book. So it is therefore we don't need a media to access it. It is unmediated information. So and then finally, carrier type in 338 field, specific terms. So we have the media type, which is more, a broader term describing the carrier type being more specific. So specific like a film reel, video disc. And by the way, it is 10 a.m. and if you need to go, please feel free to go. But I'm just, for those of you who are interested, I'm just going to kind of keep going because I'm actually very close to finishing here. So film reel, video disc, online resource, and we add subfield 2 RDA carrier at the end of the field to show that it's a term from RDA. For books, we use the term volume for the carrier. And we can, like I said, we can use codes here in addition to these, but that's once again gonna more of a local decision whether or not you use the codes or the terms or both. Here's an example of this. This is from a sound recording, an album, Babel by Mumford and Sons. Under AACR2, we would transcribe the 245 field in this way using the subfield H, sound recording. And under RDA, we do not have that. We don't have the 245H. We instead have the 336, 337, 338 fields to show that this is performed music. That is the content. It is audio, and specifically an audio disc. Okay. Because you can have performed music, recorded on DVD, right, as a video. And so, you can have performed music recorded in various ways. Audio on, an audio disc or an audio tape, various ways, right? So this just allows us to be more specific in how we describe the content and carrier types for all of our different items that we catalog, right? And I think for some people, and here's some further examples of like the Matrix, the DVD, versus the Matrix, the soundtrack, the music soundtrack on CD. So the CD, the content, media, and carrier types look the same as my Babel ones, but the DVD, we can make it clear that this is the DVD version of Matrix, showing that it's a two-dimensional moving image, video and video disc, and so forth. We can have further information about the carrier, the system requirements and everything elsewhere, like in the systems note in the 300 field, but just kind of just give some basic general information on this. And there are some libraries that are choosing just to kind of suppress this information, just kind of maybe have it behind the scenes for searching or for faceted browse or advanced searching purposes, but some are choosing to show this information in records. Like Kent State, for example, has like this video recording. You can see here in the format area, they are just including the content and carrier types. They're not including the media type, but just the content and carrier types to kind of make it clear that it is, a two-dimensional moving image and a video disc. But it also has that information in, the description. And then, further information, sorry, kind of the systems notes kind of being blocked a little bit by my circle. But we also have, the systems note, right, to be even more specific that this is a DVD from region 1, widescreen, and so forth. So it just kind of gives further information that's more machine readable. Yeah, and exactly, Dharma. Like that's why the content, media, and carrier types, you shouldn't kind of look at them as in a vacuum. Because they don't describe, they're not that specific, so they don't actually go into like the fact that it's a Blu-ray, for example. That information is actually transcribed elsewhere. There's actually further fields, new RDA fields, new MARC fields, where we can actually transcribe information about the fact that it's Blu-ray, which I didn't bring up, and that's a good point because there is additional fields for like video recordings, sound recordings, where you record further information, like systems information about the item, and I can definitely go into that further. Um, I can maybe try to include that in the MARC discussion in the fourth webinar, and also in the face-to-face workshop if you guys want, because I didn't really have time to go further into that now, and it doesn't look like they're showing that information here in this record. No, here it is, sorry, under description, sorry, I didn't mean to shout. Under the format where it says two-dimensional moving image and video disc, it has digital, optical, stereo, RDA. That's where you would transcribe further information, for example, if it's Blu-ray and so forth. I know that this is, once again, seems very generic and everything, but there is new fields that do allow you to do that. So good question. And then here's just a further example of how, a book using RDA, uh, the new RDA fields, the content and media type will be displayed in a record. And once again, this is going to be up to you and how your system can handle it, because I know that there's plenty of ILSs that can't deal with these yet, right? Maybe you guys, your system can't handle it right now. They can't process this information. So you may just be kind of like, not really doing anything with this right now, which is fine. But I'm hoping that once again, as our systems are improved and evolve to better deal with the RDA data and the new MARC fields, that you can then decide how you want to display these, if you want to display them at all. So you may just want to have it behind the scenes for kind of advanced searching and narrowing searches and so forth. So, okay, so here's just some recommended reading that I have for you guys. Obviously, there's plenty more out there. Okay, so if you follow the discussion list like AutoCAD and the RDA listserv, there's always going to be more, presentations and other good stuff coming out. So be on the lookout for that stuff. But here's just a few that I like. Like the Adam Schiff's homepage is just the bomb in my opinion. He has just tons of great examples, like literally with an RDA and AACR2 records side by side to show the differences between. He has all sorts of good stuff on his homepage, so I'd highly recommend if you just want more stuff to look at. You're like, I just need examples, help me. This is a great page to go to. This recent one that came, Marielle Vev, I'm not quite sure how to pronounce her last name. This one's also nice. She kind of did a lot of work on showing what full RDA records look like, and kind of putting this in book form and sharing it publicly. So yes, thank you. And then kind of these further resources as well, if you want to dive in further on RDA related stuff. Yeah, just be on the lookout for best practices guides coming out. I know that there's plenty of like the Music Library Association and OLAC and all sorts of these different organizations are working on best practices guides, so be on the lookout for those, and those should be helpful depending on what type of format that you focus on, if you have to catalog multiple types of formats. Those are those resources, and many of which are on the web for free. And we have 2 more webinars coming up. Not until the end of January is my linked data spiel. What the heck is that, and why should we care? Essentially, I should have titled that, what the heck is it, and why should we care? What is linked data? Which I'm going to give you the basics of linked data, RDF, and why you should care. And then the final webinar on MARC BibFrame and the relationship to RDA in February, which gives the basics on the replacement for our MARC. And like I said, I'm probably going to go through further MARC fields that are important in that as well. I'll probably have enough time to do that. So yeah, so that's it. That's it. Thanks for sticking with me despite the technical difficulties. I hope it wasn't too annoying having the sound go in and out. So I appreciate you sticking with me. Yeah. And if need be, I can talk with Luli about maybe re-recording this on a different date, so we can have a cleaner version of the audio. So, yeah, but we can talk about that further. So yeah, thank you guys for coming. Have a great holiday coming up next week, and I'll see you guys, and also in December, and I'll see you guys hopefully in January. So, take care.
Okay, thank you, Dr. Snow. And yes, actually the archive link, Swiftland never lost any audio, and I believe that the audio is intact, only with the little technical glitches that we had. Those people that could not hear, when you click on the archive link, you should be able to hear it. As soon as we're finished recording and editing it, I will play it in its entirety before I send out the link to make sure that the link did record the audio in its entirety. So you may not have to do that. And the only thing is that, unfortunately, those of you that were unable to listen for a small amount of time can get that information off of the archived link. But thank you, Dr. Snow, for another wonderful webinar. We're very lucky to have been able to participate in this. It was a great information and yet another great sneak peek of what's coming up. And as Dr. Snow has up on the screen, attendees, please remember that this was the second in a series of four. The four RDA sessions that are going to bring you to a common place of knowledge for the face-to-face workshop. We will be finalizing the date and location for the March face-to-face workshop soon, and we will be letting you know by our usual suspect methods, which, you know, are Facebook. If you have not liked if you have not liked Swiftland on Facebook, I urge you to do so, because as soon as we finalize something, it will go into your feed. And you can also keep track of our continuing education calendar on our website, and you can follow us on Twitter. I mean, we're just like all over the place. It's incredible. And of course, we do send out that message to the statewide listserv. So you have many ways to continue your connection with Swiftland and these wonderful opportunities that we're trying to bring to you. So thank you everyone for attending, and Swiftland wishes you a terrific, safe Thanksgiving holiday. Gobble till you wobble.